Hello my beautiful book besties, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Liv and today we are going to be chatting all about my favorite cozy reads for fall. In case you didn't know, I recently put out a general book recommendation video of just any type of fall books, but these specifically are going to be cozy books that give you those warm fuzzy feelings that keep you warm during the fall and winter season. And honestly, it's the perfect excuse to rave about some of my favorite books if you have not picked any of these up yet. I'm not someone that reads a ton of horror or super spooky things around this time of year, so if you are like me, I also felt like I needed to share some of my cozy books with you in case there are some of these you've never read before, or maybe you've never heard of before, that I have read personally and absolutely loved. I do also have scary books coming for people that don't really read horror, which I'm also very excited for, but you'll have to look forward to that more towards October and Halloween. But for this video, we are just going to talk about some fantasy, some cozy mysteries, even some graphic novels that I feel like will be perfect. Even if not all of these are fall books specifically, I feel like they kind of fit the mold of this time of year. You know the drill, grab yourselves a hot beverage, a cozy blanket, and let's just get to talking about these books. I of course had to start us off with a classic fantasy, The Hobbit. I read this for the first time this year and I don't know how, because I grew up off The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and even though a lot of this story does take place during the spring or the summertime, I feel like hobbits are just cozy. Hobbit holes are cozy. Anything about hobbits is just cozy. How many times can I say the word cozy in this video? But honestly, if you have never read The Hobbit, this story is just a comfort read. It has friendship, it has dragons, it has high stakes, and I love the adventure that these hobbits go on. There's so much great humor. There are so many elements in this story that I feel like today's fantasy is based from, and I feel like cozy fantasy is definitely getting very popular. I mean, I have a couple more here to share with you. So if you have not read the OG Hobbit and you love dragons and you love humor and you don't want to commit to the giant Lord of the Rings series, which I have yet to muster up the courage, I feel like this is the perfect place to start. Again, it's a little bit more springtime, but this book is less than 300 pages, and if you can get a hold of the audio where Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum, narrates, I mean, right there, you just have the perfect setup to have a great cozy time with this story. Next, I want to talk about a book that I also recommended in my previous fall video, but it deserves all of the love. I have never read a book that I have gotten sucked into so quickly because the first couple lines are just the perfect fall vibe, and that is Divine Rivals and also Ruthless Vows. This is a duology. You do not have to dedicate a lot of time to an 8-book series like maybe Sarah J. Maas, and the first couple lines I'm just gonna read to you because if you have not heard the first couple lines, you need to. Cold fog had settled over the depot like a burial shroud, and Iris Winnow thought the weather couldn't have been better. She could hardly see the train through the gloam, but she could taste it in the evening air. Metal and smoke and burning coal. The wooden platform was slick beneath her shoes, gleaming with rain puddles and piles of decaying leaves. That is the perfect setup for a rainy day of reading this book. If you know nothing about this story, it's about Roman and Iris, who are both journalists and they both write for gazettes, so they are kind of enemies to lovers in this story. There are also gods and mythology, and the two one day find out that they can write notes back and forth to each other because of a wardrobe. And for me, that just brought back all the nostalgic vibes we got with C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia. So that was a huge selling point for me to get into this book, and I have no regrets. I read this book in 2 sittings. It is just beautifully written. The prose is perfect for fall. It's comforting. I love this story so much, and I will rave and talk about it any chance I can get. Because I have not read Spells for Forgetting, but I did find an all-time favorite author in Adrienne Young last year, I do have to mention The Unmaking of June Farrow, because Adrienne Young's books just completely take your breath away. A woman risks everything to end her family's centuries-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love in this mesmerizing novel. Mesmerizing is definitely the right word, because I was sucked in from page 1 until the end of this story. I was so invested in June Farrow's story, and even if you aren't a fantasy reader, I feel like anyone can enjoy her books. She has a way of weaving reality into magical parts of everyday life, and I just thought this book was so special, especially for anyone out there who's a mother. I feel like this book is going to hold a special place in your heart. And again, I would recommend Spells for Forgetting. I feel like that one's a little bit more fall, and I have yet to read that one yet, but I can definitely speak very highly of Adrienne Young and this book just in general. I feel like also the cover kind of gives like fall leaves. Something about this book is just so special to me, and if you haven't read it yet, I really hope that you do. Next is another book that feels funny to call it cozy, but it takes place on the coast and it's just a very slow burn, so I feel like it's really good for fall, and that is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. There are some very creepy gothic elements to this book, which is why I feel like it is perfect for fall. Since childhood, Effie has been haunted by this fairy king in her dreams, and he comes from a story from one of her favorite authors. She ends up going to this type of architectural school, which yes, this is kind of dark academia gothic at the same time, but she actually is entered into this contest to reconstruct or replan her favorite author's house, basically. So she gets to this giant manor on the coast. It's foggy vibes, it's always raining, and she teams up with this other student named Preston, and together they kind of revamp this manor, but a lot of spooky things happen along the way, and they start to uncover secrets about her favorite author that she never would have found out before. There's a lot of mysterious things happening in this book. There's lots of rain, like I said, and I feel like this book is just perfect. I feel like this book and Ava Reid in general is a little bit underrated, and even though this is the only book of hers that I've read, I already own and cannot wait to read the rest of them. Next, I have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and I love to recommend this book to people who are beginner fantasy readers because this book is very low stakes. We have our main character Viv, who is an orc. She's been fighting her whole life and she's tired. She wants to retire and set up a coffee shop in this little cozy town on the coast. She makes all these amazing coffee drinks and brings in all these customers. I think they even call coffee bean water because the customers in this town have no idea what coffee even is, and it's super cute in general just to see these people experience coffee and how much they love it and get addicted to it. There's even a little mouse who's the baker, and he helps them experiment with different recipes for all these different pastries. There's also a little sprinkle of romance, which wasn't too much for the story but added just enough to keep the plot going. This book is the #1 book that really catapulted me into cozy fantasy just in general. I don't know how I haven't read Bookshops and Bone Dust yet, but I definitely would recommend reading this one, even though the other one's a prequel. I feel like this one was just so good by itself. If you're looking for coffee shop vibes and friendships and just community, almost kind of like that little Stars Hollow vibe with some quirky characters, I feel like you're really gonna love this one. Another author that I've deemed a cozy fantasy author for me specifically is T. Kingfisher. If you have not read a T. Kingfisher book yet, I would definitely recommend starting with A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This one reads a little bit more like a middle grade because I know a lot of her other books are a little bit dark. 14-year-old Mona isn't like the wizards charged with defending the city. She can't control lightning or speak to water. Her familiar is a sourdough starter, and her magic only works on bread. She has a comfortable life in her aunt's bakery making gingerbread men dance, but Mona's life is turned upside down when she finds a dead body on the bakery floor. We have wizards and magic, we have cozy baking, we also have a good mystery. I mean, what more could you want in a fall book? The next book that I personally cannot wait to continue in this series is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I'm sure you've heard before this book being pitched as Bridgerton with fairies, but that's honestly exactly what it is. Ever since she was cursed by a fairy, Theodora Eddings has no sense of fear or embarrassment, an unfortunate condition that leaves her prone to accidental scandal. Dora hopes to be a quiet, sensible wallflower during the London season, but when Elias Wilder discovers her condition, she is instead drawn into dangerous fairy affairs. This book had the sweetest, cutest romance, and I do know a lot of people think of this book as kind of like middle grade, but personally I just love the atmosphere. I loved the balls, I loved the friendship dynamic between Theodora and the other girl whose name I'm forgetting right now. There was also a really dark undertone that came into play towards the end of the book that I was not expecting. It made me so intrigued that I ended up picking up the rest of the series almost immediately. I went and bought them on Amazon because I I absolutely could not wait. I cannot wait to finish off the series, and I do know she has another spin-off series called The Witch Would Not that I just bought recently. I don't know how cozy that one is, but I do know it is set in the same world. Next, I want to talk about two of my all-time favorite middle grade books, which I haven't talked about in at least a year on my channel, but if you've been around here long enough, you know that I'm obsessed with both of these books. The first one is Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. It has been a while since we have heard news on the fourth book coming out. I thought it was supposed to come out this October, but either way, I am very tempted to reread or restart this series. If you love Harry Potter, but you also don't want to do a giant reread of Harry Potter, I always recommend this series because it has to do with Morgan, who has a special type of ability that she doesn't know how to control, and she ends up going to this academy and going through trials with other kids that have kind of the same powers. So she's part of this prestigious organization where they go through all these different tests, and if she doesn't pass, she could face death. We also have Juniper, who's kind of like her trainer and looks out for her. We also have like this giant cat. There are so many similarities to Harry Potter, but this is very unique enough. But I love this series. It's so whimsical. There's a mystery that's unraveling throughout most of the series. I need to restart this because it's been a really long time since I read this. If you are a Harry Potter lover and you have not picked this up, I definitely think you should give it a try. The next book I want to talk about is one that honestly has a huge special place in my heart. This book got me into middle grade books in the first place. That is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. If you need any convincing up front, look at this map. This is absolutely stunning. This book takes place in a small town where all of the townspeople believe that they have to essentially sacrifice a baby to this witch that lives in the forest in order for her not to basically destroy all of them. But little do they know, the witch actually is a good witch, and she rescues all these children and she rehomes them in another town on the other side of the forest. And how she keeps them alive is she ends up feeding them starlight. Well, with our main character in this book, she accidentally feeds her moonlight. And from there, I'm just gonna let you experience the story for yourself. But this witch also lives in a place with a swamp monster and a tiny baby dragon. Like, how cute is that? I feel like this is the perfect combination of cozy fantasy, witchy vibes, but also such a sweet, heartfelt story. And I also am long overdue for a reread of this one. It has been forever, but this is one of my all-time favorite cozy reads. And if you are looking for something that's just really easy breezy to get through, or you have kids around this age, I just adore Kelly Barnhill. Speaking of witchy vibes, we have my #1 recommended cozy mystery series forever and ever, and that is In the Company of Witches by Orly Wallace and When the Crow's Away. Sadly, I will say she's not continuing to finish writing this series or to continue it on, which is so sad. But essentially the first book is like Stars Hollow B&B vibes, but with the Sanderson sisters, and also practical magic vibes. So if that does not want to make you pick it up, I don't know what will. When a guest dies in the B&B, she helps her aunts run. A young witch must rely on some good old-fashioned investigating to clear her aunt's name in this magical and charming new cozy mystery. Our main character is Bryn Warren, and she recently lost her husband, but she's also coming into her witch or magical powers. This book doesn't get too dark on the witchy side of things, but it's just enough to be an emotional read and how those emotions and her grieving kind of tie into her powers. I thought the author just did that so well. And of course, we love a good murder mystery, but the aunts in this book, I'm telling you, if you don't read it for anything else but them, they are absolutely hilarious. These books are just so emotional and so incredible and so good, and I really want to reread these right now. Another witchy read, but one that I consider witchy but kind of not. I don't want to give anything away, but if you have not picked up Cackle by Rachel Harrison, please let this be your sign to do so. I know this book is definitely not going to be for everyone because there's unsettling things that happen in this book, but there's nothing so horrific that I couldn't finish it. For me, I kind of like to describe this book as contemporary chick lit with dark humor. Our main character, Annie, has recently broken up with her boyfriend and she decides to move to a completely different town. She decides to have a brand new start to her life and she moves to this town. So you kind of follow Annie through the journey of grief and breakup and all these different stages. There's just so many things about this book that I don't know how to describe describe. I know it's not everyone's taste, but for me, I couldn't put it down. Rachel Harrison's writing is so captivating, and I definitely recommend starting with this one because it is cozy and it's definitely not as horrific as some of her other books. This one has just the right amount of cozy but uneasiness that I love in books, and I really enjoyed this one. Another cozy small town mystery series that I love recommending that I think is so underrated is Juniper Bean Resorts to Murder. This book was so much fun and definitely had emotional elements that I was not expecting, but I really ended up loving in this book. And the second one is called Heidi Lucy Loses Her Mind. I don't think there's any crossover between these two. I haven't read the second one yet, but I really need to. Juniper Bean has big plans for writing her career. Swoony kisses, sigh-inducing happily ever after, she's going to write them all. There's just one problem. She can't seem to stop killing off her main characters. After accepting what a genre change is in order, Juniper sets out to do some research. What's the best way to carry a dead body? How exactly does one pick a lock? Juniper's gonna find out with the unwilling help of her new roommate, Aiden. Turns out she does not know her roommate is going to be a male, and of course they end up having this cute little romance, but I also loved that she was a writer. Somehow that just made this book extra cozy. This book overall is just one of those feel-good series that's happy and humorous, and honestly these covers are just beautiful. I feel like they definitely scream fall. And if you are a romance reader, I had to recommend a book for you, and that would be Happy Medium by Sarah Adler. I recently read this and absolutely fell in love with it. If you are wanting something with cute ghosty vibes set in a small town, this is perfect. It's also set on a farm. Gretchen Acorn is our main character, who is technically like a psychic medium, even though she kind of fakes it for money. And one of her customers one day says that she will pay her big money to help this guy named Charlie at a farm nearby and help him sell his house. Apparently it's not selling because it's being overrun by a ghost, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. There was a plot twist in this that I didn't see coming, and it also had a very emotional ending, which I also didn't see coming. So this book was just full of unexpected things, but the overall cozy small town Stars Hollow vibe is 100% there. Last but definitely not least, if you are someone who isn't into graphic novels or wants to get into them, I do have a few of my favorite recommendations for you, ones that I personally would reread and honestly might this year. First we have Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. These books go together so well. It's about our main character, Garlic. Yes, all of these main characters are vegetables. She suffers from anxiety and she feels like she's always doing the wrong thing. No matter how much her friend Carrot and kindly witch Agnes encourage her, Garlic just wants to tend her own garden where it's nice and safe. But when the village of vegetable people learns that a bloodthirsty vampire may be moved into the nearby castle, they all agree that despite her fear and self-doubt, Garlic is the obvious choice to confront him. I love how Garlic is so small, but she's so strong, and even though she's anxious, she pushes through in order to save the people that she loves. Even though I love the cute vegetables and characters in these stories, the message overall is what really makes me love these two. The artwork is also very fall. There's a lot of green and oranges and browns, and it's a very quick read. And of course, Vampire and a Witch, how much more fall can you get? For obvious reasons, I had to add Sheets to this list. I think I've read everything Brenna Thumler has put out, and I've never been disappointed. This is about a young girl named Marjorie, who unfortunately her mother has passed away, and she has left her and her father to essentially run this laundromat in this small town. There is a little sheet ghost that is determined to wreak havoc, but also really wants to be Marjorie's friend. I not only love the beautiful colors in this book, but I absolutely adore Wendell the Ghost's friendship with Marjorie and how he helps her through a hard time of grief. And it's just the perfect cozy small town story with a little ghost and a little girl, and it's just adorable. Speaking of an adorable ghost that befriends a little girl, we have a seance tea party, which I feel like is so horribly underrated, and I really want to convince more people to read this. Our girl named Laura struggles with friendships, and one day she runs into the ghost that haunts her house, and they end up having tea parties together. And the overall message of this story is just never to lose your childlike wonder. This also had such an emotional ending, and obviously the colors are very fall once again. I just adore this story. I think I've read more from this author as well. There's also a chapter that takes place during Halloween where she dresses up as a witch, and I just don't see many people reading this book. I really enjoyed it and I really love the message. Last but not least, if you're wanting a graphic novel that is a little bit more adventurous, let me tell you about one of my all-time favorites, and that is Lightfall. This is number 2, but the first one looks a lot more fall. It is green and has browns in it, and it's absolutely beautiful and just so magical. This has my favorite artwork literally of all time. Bee goes off on this wild adventure with this Galdarian to find her grandfather. She also struggles with anxiety herself, and I just love that representation in graphic novels especially. This one portrays it so well. The humor in this book is also perfect. Like I said, the artwork is my absolute all-time favorite. It's cozy. It reminds me of the Hobbits going on a journey. I need to get a hold of the third one immediately because that one looks super dark and also really good for fall. So this would be my number 1 recommendation for you. Well friends, that is all of my top cozy recommendations for you. You could even read these in the winter season. It's been a while since I've done any cozy book type of recommendation, and talking about a lot of these now made me want to immediately reread them. But I hope you found a new book here that you want to pick up this fall. If you made it this far in the video, feel free to leave me a cozy coffee mug in the comments below. I would love to know that you're here and that you watched this video. Thank you so much for supporting my channel, being here, clicking on this video. Thank you to everyone who has recently subscribed to my channel. You guys are so kind. I love you so much, and I cannot wait to see you in my next fall video.